Hi everyone, it is me, Krylios, Team Rayceen Productions MC and producer, and joining me today, of course, is the fabulous Rayceen Pendarvis. Hey Rayceen, how are you?
Fine. How are you? Greetings and salutations, all.
Of course, and we have our wonderful guest joining us today, Claudia Barragan. Hey Claudia, how are you doing?
Doing well. How you doing?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for joining us today. And you are running for at large here in the DC Council. Tell me about that. And why did
Yes.
you why did you decide to run at this time?
Yeah. Well, I decided to run because I truly believe that the council needs a lot of diversity. Currently, the council doesn't have not just ethnical diversity, like such as myself from I'm Latina, but also I'm an urban planner. So the skill sets that I bring are very different than what uh, most of the other council members have. Not until long ago, I was working actually at the DC Council for Councilmember Trayon White. I was a policy analyst, and in order for me to run, I had to say goodbye to that job for a little bit, and then the huge need of representation is something that's really dear to my heart, and I've been doing the work already for over a decade, and I definitely think it's time. It's definitely time, and there's only one seat available, so.
So,
Definitely.
if elected, what are your three uh, strong points in your election that you would like to focus on?
Yeah, definitely. So, like I mentioned, I'm an urban planner. So a lot of the work that we've already been doing is to address a lot of the inequities in the district. Um,
Hmm.
and my platform is based on equity and specifically equitable development, which includes bringing in equity in terms of education, transportation, health, housing, which is hugely needed. And not just in terms of affordable housing, but also being able to really own a piece of land, right? How do we ever get to that point? Um, and then in terms of environment also, so I'm also an environmental policy analyst, and there aren't many people of color who are involved in the environmental field and that are looking at it from a justice perspective. So in terms of what I plan to accomplish, there's already things in there in council that we have already established. This year, for example, just up until November, the comprehensive plan is going to be reviewed. And through my work of last year, entire year, we were able to include equity finally in over 20 years, like the actual definition of equitable development and equity and racial equity uh, in the comp plan. And that was a big success, but that was one tiny ounce of a huge endeavor that is about to take on. Um, so I definitely want to do that. Also establishing high displacement risk zones in the area and putting a lot more protections for communities who have already been rooted in the city, and
Hmm.
also to prevent people from being displaced. I myself am at risk of displacement. I don't own, and I've been living here over 25 years. And so making sure that we have solutions, but also the low hanging fruit that is usually not, you don't even need that much funding, is just really readjustments of regulations. And again, that's where the diversity in mindset and also a more solution driven perspective in council would be helpful, because so much is polarized and there's really no third option, and there's really no like solutions that are coming from the community itself.
Definitely, definitely. And with this pandemic going on and with everything that's going on with the Black Lives Matter movement, how do you see your place on the DC Council kind of addressing, what's going on with the pandemic in this city, as well as addressing racial inequality in this city as well?
Yeah, so I'll address the COVID first. So the Latino community, immigrant community, and that's the other big thing, right? Throughout my advocacy for, like, again, more than a decade, I've always wanted to make sure that we're not talking about Latino equals immigrant. right? Because there's always that assumption. Immigrants come from everywhere. And in the city, I grew up in a very diverse city, and I'm seeing it get less and less and less diverse. And that's really troubling to me because people are coming in to work. 1 in every 6 Latinos is 1 in every 6 DC worker is an immigrant, for example, but they don't necessarily live in the city. And it's really hitting us. COVID is really hitting us because it's the workforce, right? It's the essential workers, the cleaning staff. Even in the Wilson building, right? Every single person that cleans that building, like a high percentage of them are immigrants, and Black. And needless to say about the disparities in health in the African-American community and how that's impacting like basically communities. Over the weekend, I was out asking for petitions, and it was wonderful to see a lot of young people being out in the street. But you could notice, you could easily notice that there weren't that many immigrants, and this is like in parks and African-American families just hanging around because we're afraid. And the data is kind of not following us either. So I'm a very data-oriented person. And whenever we see the data, we see this global numbers, right? But we don't necessarily see the actual neighborhood. So I'm an ANC, and in my ANC, I decided to start a neighborhood based plan for reopening. And that would start addressing the neighborhood level. Literally, what are our neighbors doing? How are kids doing in terms of their virtual learning? How are families like who don't necessarily, who are unemployed right now and may not be receiving those benefits, what are they doing? And then the elderly, we have a lot of elderly African-American people in my community. So we want to make sure that they're doing well as well. But we can't do that at that global level. I think we should really start looking at it at the neighborhood level, and that's what I started doing. In terms of the racial equity, so back in 2010, in the Latino community, and this is where I will speak definitely in the Latino community, we have some serious racial issues. And every single time that something like what happened with George Floyd comes up, it hurts my heart to see how we're just not there as a community as a whole. So as long as I've been doing this work, I've always wanted to model what anti-racism is. And also because I come from Latin America, I look at racism from the lens of colonization. And that's a really important thing to focus on, I think, because class and discrimination also plays within races. Even within the Latino community, Afro-Latinos are not, they don't have a large voice, right? And how do we start bringing those issues up, acknowledging and noticing our place within the Black Lives Matter movement? Because it's not the community's place to be like making sure that we know what we should know, right? Because there's already been so much hurt and pain and trauma. So that's been my role. Like, and I've been doing it for literally as the minute that I started realizing how huge this impact was in our overall safety even. And we get stopped as well too. And by police and just bad policing. But at the same time, it's like we can't take that space, and we have to be part of the solution.
Definitely.
That's so important.
Yeah.
And for folks who need to follow you, or how can they help with your campaign, could you give us that information?
Yes, definitely. So currently I am I'm getting all the signatures, and I just wanted to say this. Over the weekend, like I mentioned, I've been out and about throughout the city, and it was literally just my husband and I, and it's Pride Week in the city, right? And the support that I got from just the community itself, the LGBTQ plus community, has been really amazing. I just want to say huge gracias, because it's been like just the openingness to like be able to hear what I have to say, and the opportunity to be on the ballot. And that's literally what I'm asking for right now, is just to be able to be on the ballot. Once I get on the ballot, I get my petition signed, and I'm really close to it, the campaign will start pushing. And I came in really late in the game because I wanted to make sure the budget was going forward. I wanted to make sure that Ward 8 and all of the funding that's needed for the entire community in terms of recreation and everything else was already set in place. So that's why I came in late in the game. But I also think that it gives me the opportunity to be able to do a lean campaign, and it's a very productive campaign, right? And with minimal funds. So I'm gonna do my best in doing it. And right now, that the biggest thing that I need is signing those petitions.
Thank you so much, and thanks so much for being here with us today, Claudia. And by the way, before I let you go, I'm really glad that you mentioned that not all Latinas are immigrants, not all immigrants are Latinas. I myself, and I'm an immigrant, I'm Jamaican and I'm Black, and so whatever you do for the immigrant community, or whatever one does for the immigrant community, affects so many more people than people generally think of. So thank you so much for that, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, and feel free to go to the website claudia4dc.com.
Thank you so much. Rayceen, take us out.
And most of all, thank you for watching.
Bye everyone.
Bye. Okay.